Karen's teacup rattled against its saucer. I'm not sure what you mean. I've simply been ensuring our community maintains its standards. Ma'am, we've received multiple complaints about harassment, abuse of power, and potential fraud, Detective Collins explained, settling into Karen's pristine white sofa without invitation. Apparently, you've been using your position to target specific residents with retaliatory code enforcement actions. The word fraud hit Karen like ice water. That's ridiculous. I'm simply enforcing existing regulations. Ada Torres opened a thick folder. Ms. Whitfield, you reported 17 different violations to city departments in a single weekend. Violations that, according to our investigation, either don't exist or fall well within acceptable community standards. You also appear to have misrepresented your authority to initiate these inspections. I am the HOA president. Yes, but you're not a city official, Detective Collins said gently. And according to your own HOA bylaws, major enforcement actions require a board vote. When did the board approve this campaign? The question hung in the air like a sword. Karen's mouth opened and closed several times before she managed to speak. The board, they don't understand the severity of the situation. So you acted unilaterally, Ada Torres noted, making a mark in her folder. Ms. Whitfield, we're not here to arrest you today, but we need you to understand that your actions have crossed some very serious lines. If you don't cease these retaliatory measures immediately, you could face charges for harassment, abuse of office, and filing false reports. After they left, Karen sat in her living room for 3 hours, staring at the wall where her HOA President of the Year certificate hung in its gold frame. Everything she'd worked for, every battle she'd fought to create the perfect community, was crumbling around her like a sandcastle at high tide. But as the sun set over Sunset Meadows, Karen realized something that sent chills down her spine. She didn't care about the legal threats. The pool incident had awakened something primal in her, something that had been sleeping beneath years of committee meetings and violation notices. These people had humiliated her, dismissed her authority, treated her vision of perfection like a joke. If they wanted to play hardball, she'd show them what real power looked like. Standing at her window, watching Mrs. Chen's lights flicker on across the courtyard, Karen began planning her next move. The authorities thought they could intimidate her with threats of legal action. The residents thought they could ignore her rules without consequences. They had no idea who they were dealing with. As she pulled out her phone to make a call to a contact most people didn't know she had, someone who specialized in the kind of problems that couldn't be solved through official channels, Karen smiled for the first time since her phone had taken its unexpected swim. The Poolside Rampage had been just the beginning. What came next would make that afternoon look like a church social. After all, she was still the HOA president. And presidents, Karen had learned, sometimes had to make the hard choices that others couldn't stomach. The war for Sunset Meadows was just getting started. I don't need help from rule breakers and community destroyers, Karen protested, but her voice cracked slightly. For the first time in years, she felt genuinely helpless. Her phone contained everything: photos of every minor violation, records of every complaint, contact information for every city official she'd harassed into submission. Mrs. Chen surfaced, triumphantly holding the dripping phone above her head. Got it. Karen snatched the device, frantically pressing buttons. The screen remained stubbornly black. It's dead, Jake observed helpfully. Water damage. You'll need to put it in rice for like 3 days minimum. 3 days later, Karen emerged from her townhouse like a general preparing for the final battle. Her phone, successfully resurrected by a bag of jasmine rice and sheer determination, buzzed with notifications from the 17 different city departments she'd contacted over the weekend. But technology was only phase 1 of her master plan. Phase 2 involved Mrs. Henderson from Unit 23A, who owed Karen a favor after the garden gnome incident of last summer. More importantly, Mrs. Henderson worked for the city's code enforcement division and had access to inspection schedules. You're absolutely certain this will work, Mrs. Henderson whispered as they stood in Karen's meticulously organized home office, surrounded by color-coded binders and laminated community guidelines. Darling, I've been preparing for this moment my entire tenure as HOA president, Karen replied, spreading blueprints across her glass desk. Every resident has violations. They just don't know it yet. Mrs. Chen's water aerobics violated noise ordinances. Those teenagers' pool games created safety hazards. Even Officer Martinez parked 17 inches too close to the fire hydrant. The plan was breathtakingly simple and absolutely ruthless. Simultaneous code enforcement inspections on every unit that had witnessed her poolside humiliation. Karen had spent 72 hours documenting every possible violation, from slightly overgrown grass to improperly stored garbage cans. She'd even discovered that Jake Morrison's family had installed a small basketball hoop without HOA approval. But what about your own violations? Mrs. Henderson asked nervously. Don't you have that unauthorized rose garden extension? Karen's smile could have cut glass. My roses are exactly 3 inches within regulation boundaries. I measured twice and documented everything. By Thursday morning, the first inspection notices appeared on doorsteps throughout Sunset Meadows. By Thursday afternoon, Karen's phone rang incessantly, with panicked residents demanding explanations. By Thursday evening, she was perched at her kitchen window with a cup of herbal tea, watching her neighbors scramble to address violations they'd never known existed. The sight filled her with something approaching joy. This was order. This was control. This was exactly what the community needed. Friday brought the first casualty. Mrs. Chen received a $500 fine for her unauthorized pool exercise equipment. Apparently her phone weights violated regulations about personal items in common areas. The teenagers' families each received citations for improper use of community facilities, while Jake's basketball hoop triggered a full architectural review that would cost his parents nearly $2,000 in fees and legal documents. Karen felt like a conductor orchestrating a beautiful symphony of bureaucratic revenge. But Saturday morning brought an unexpected visitor, Detective Sarah Collins from the county sheriff's office, accompanied by a stern-looking woman in a business suit. Ms. Whitfield, I'm Detective Collins, and this is Assistant District Attorney Rebecca Torres. We need to discuss your recent activities. Margaret Karen Whitfield stood at the edge of the Sunset Meadows community pool at 6:47 a.m., wielding a pool skimmer like a medieval weapon while screaming at an inflatable flamingo. Who puked this monstrosity in our pristine waters? She shrieked, jabbing the net toward the offending float. Behind her, 3 horrified teenagers watched their summer fun float away on the business end of her righteous fury. The flamingo wasn't even the worst part. 20 minutes earlier, Karen had discovered someone had the audacity to use blue pool noodles instead of the HOA-approved beige ones. The violation sent her into such a rage that she'd called the police, the fire department, and somehow, inexplicably, animal control. Now Officer Martinez stood beside the pool, trying to explain why flamingo-shaped pool floats weren't actually a criminal offense. Ma'am, for the 3rd time, decorative pool accessories are not a matter for law enforcement, Martinez said, his patience wearing thinner than Karen's last nerve. But Karen wasn't listening. She'd spotted something far worse than unauthorized inflatables. Mrs. Chen from Unit 47B was doing water aerobics in the pool during designated quiet reflection hours that Karen had invented exactly 17 minutes ago. Excuse me, Karen bellowed, marching around the pool's perimeter like a general surveying a battlefield. This is supposed to be a peaceful morning environment. Your vigorous movements are creating excessive ripples that violate Section 12.7 of the pool regulations. Mrs. Chen stopped mid-jumping jack, water dripping from her silver hair. Karen, there is no Section 12.7. I helped write these regulations 5 years ago. Well, there should be. Karen snapped, pulling out her phone to photograph the evidence. I'm calling an emergency HOA meeting. This chaos ends today. That's when she noticed the teenagers had returned with reinforcements. 6 kids now lounged around the pool area with an assortment of colorful floats, beach balls, and what appeared to be a small inflatable whale. Karen's left eye began to twitch. Oh, you think this is funny? She hissed, advancing toward the group. You think you can turn our sophisticated community amenity into some kind of water park? 16-year-old Jake Morrison looked up from his phone. Lady, it's literally a swimming pool. That's what pools are for. The words hit Karen like a slap. Swimming? For fun. The very concept was antithetical to everything she'd worked to build in Sunset Meadows. This pool was meant to be admired, perhaps used for gentle, dignified exercise by approved residents during designated hours. Not this aquatic anarchy. That's it, she declared, turning sharply toward the pool house. I'm getting the master key. This pool is officially COOSE until further notice. Officer Martinez stepped forward. Ma'am, you can't just close a community pool because you don't like how people are using it. Watch me. Karen snarled, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against her phone screen as she typed furiously. I'm documenting every violation, every unauthorized use, every safety hazard these delinquents have created. The insurance company will back me up. But as she stormed toward the pool house, her designer sandals slipped on the wet concrete. Karen's arms windmilled frantically as she fought for balance, her phone flying through the air in a perfect arc before landing with a satisfying splash in the deep end. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the birds seemed to pause their morning songs. My phone, Karen whispered, staring at the ripples where her device had disappeared. All my evidence, my photos, my HOA documentation. Mrs. Chen emerged from the pool, water streaming from her swim clothes. I'll get it, she said simply, taking a deep breath before diving down. No, Karen shrieked. Don't you dare touch my property. This is tampering with evidence. Officer Martinez, arrest her. But Mrs. Chen was already underwater, and Karen found herself in the unprecedented position of needing help from the very people she'd been terrorizing. The teenagers looked on with barely concealed amusement, while Officer Martinez shook his head. Ma'am, she's trying to help you.